You're watching
You're watching
You're watching
West Hartford
Community Television.
Community Television.
For the community,
for the community,
By the community.
by the community.
And it's a wrap.
Hello and welcome to Shalom Hartford. Today I'm speaking to Richard Sugarman, the founding president of Connecticut Forum, along with his wife Doris Sugarman. Today he is the president of Hartford Promise. How does that happen? I'm Pat Kazakoff. You're watching Shalom Hartford. Stay with me and we're going to meet this Renaissance man, Richard Sugarman. So you were the founding director,
I don't know if I can make this Renaissance man thing happen, but I'll try. Go ahead.
Okay, well, we're going to
I'll
go
try.
with that. So you were the founding president of Connecticut Forum.
Yeah.
And I'm listening to you and I'm hearing a Southern accent.
You hear the Southern accent,
I
huh?
hear it,
I'm not
I
trying
hear
to hide. You wouldn't buy Southern Connecticut? You wouldn't?
No,
I couldn't
no,
get that
that's
past
not
you?
gonna
All right.
happen.
So I was born in Ohio. I was born in the most eastern part of Ohio, near Pennsylvania. And I grew up in Richmond, Virginia. We moved there when I was about 5 and a half. Grew up in Richmond.
Now I really hear it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
when I
yeah.
talk about Richmond,
Richmond,
when I
right,
talk about
right.
Richmond, and when I use words like M-I-L-E, mile, and
Mile,
pile,
right.
That's when it comes out. But that's where you hear it. And I've been here for almost 30 years in Connecticut and in West Hartford. And but you keep your formative years accent. And
You know,
so I'm happy to keep this actually.
You're doing now a lot what people, like kids talk about, the millennials. You're really the social entrepreneur.
I actually think of myself that way,
Yeah.
and I have for a long time. Absolutely.
So
yes.
what in your...
Before there was the word social
Right,
entrepreneur.
right, because
yes.
in your era there wasn't that word. This is a new word that the millennials have created. So what in your background, like growing up, how does your background look that led to this?
Well, I can look at an early starting point, but I would even go back before. So, my family is a very interesting working class family from, Ohio, West Virginia, Pennsylvania, working class people, little towns that we all know about now or think we know about now, but that's where my family comes from.
When you say working class, what did your father do?
So my father he owned a little women's clothing store, in Weirton, West Virginia, a little steel town, and the big employer was Weirton Steel, and that's where everybody worked and everything revolved around Weirton Steel. And my grandfather owned a little auto parts store in Weirton, West Virginia, a little auto parts store.
So would we call that working class or would we just call it middle class?
Oh, no.
Oh, no?
I would say it was working class, but probably everybody in that part of the country was working class to one degree or another.
But you're entrepreneurial because they were entrepreneurial people.
My father had a store, my grandfather had a store. I think the real story here, though, is that when my grandfather died at a fairly early age, my grandmother took over the auto parts store and continued to run it until she was 86 years old. And she commuted from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania to Weirton, West Virginia 3 or 4 days a week to run this auto parts store. That's what she did. That's what I grew up with, is a grandmother, is that kind of example of a person that you just do it. And why not do it? And it was relatively successful in terms of supporting her, supporting parts of our family. My mother, also was I would say a pioneer in business. My mother went to Ohio State University in the 40s during the war. She was in the School of Commerce, the School of Business.
That's
she
unusual.
Very unusual, very few women. She was an honor student, a truly honored student at Ohio State, and was offered a position at Colgate-Palmolive as a woman in the management track at Colgate-Palmolive in the 40s.
We used to call it the management training program.
Right.
That's
Not
what
many
you said.
women
No,
in that program
no.
at that time. So I grew up with great examples of men and women in my family who did things, who worked for things, who were prepared to take chances, to be sort of the pioneers, if you will, at things. That's just what I grew up with. So for me, you know, that was the model. I would say the other piece of this that I think sort of launched me personally is that when we moved to Richmond, Virginia, I was too young to get into first grade in the public school system. So my parents looked for an alternative, and the alternative they found was Fork Union Military Academy. So when I moved to Richmond and I was, you know, less than 6 years old, within a couple of weeks, they took me to Fork Union Military Academy. So I was the only person in the first grade at Fork Union Military